Welcome back, everybody, to Fantasy Fest Live here on the YouTube channel. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, like the stream as well. Drop your comments below because, well, we love to hear from you and get your questions answered also. And Andrew Erickson back, and look who just came into town. He's got the mini helmets behind him, too. Those are my favorite things. Jamey Eisenberg from CBS. I remember as a kid, because I'm old, I'd put the quarter in there in the grocery store, and you'd twist that thing, hoping to get a good helmet. And next thing you know, it wasn't like the cool Houston Oiler one. It wasn't anything. I get like a New York Giants helmet. And that's just kind of boring for me. Jamey, do you have those same fond memories of the little mini helmets? Oh, we're on mute. We got to unmute you there for a second.
Sorry. When like my kids will go to where they have the things with the candy, it used to be like such a joy to get the candy. Like I won't let my kids near that. no way.
That's bad parenting. Yeah. Any of that candy's been in there probably since the time you and I were kids.
That's right.
So don't eat that, kids. See,
right.
Already Jamey Eisenberg giving you good
advice. Andrew doesn't know those things.
Andrew doesn't know. Andrew, did you ever eat those candies from those things where you would twist the the grocery store, like those big metal handles there, and then like the little gumball would drop out?
I only vaguely remember the ones that had like the fruit and they had like the oranges and the bananas, but the banana did not taste like actual banana.
I'm pretty sure there was nothing actually real in any of that. But what is real today, of course, bounce back wide receivers. And there are a lot of big names on the list here to talk about. And we're going to start with one of the bigger ones here. It's Cooper Kupp, because this is that boomer bust guy. I know I've been on with you at CBS a few times and we've talked, Jamey, about Cooper Kupp, and I keep saying for me, he's a guy that I feel really comfortable with as a wide receiver 3 in that big wide receiver build. As a wide receiver 2, I start to panic a little bit and get a little concerned. So I know everything is always sunshine and rainbows at training camp, but are you somebody that is buying into all the positive buzz of Cooper Kupp, who's currently being drafted around wide receiver 18 as a guy who can really bounce back, play a full season, and be an asset in 2024?
So, I'm generally apt to avoid guys at this age, and when they start to show you some decline or fade or just an injury history, it's easy just to run away. But then you just look at the situation and the fact that he came back in better shape, and now the other guy is banged up in Puka Nacua, who also has an injury track record. And that this offense is going to find ways to get him open. So I think at the right price, he's worth buying into. If you're going to say Cooper Kupp is going to save my fantasy team or be the headliner of my fantasy team like he was the last couple of seasons, or certainly before the breakdown happened last year, then I think you're making a huge mistake. If he is your number 3 receiver, I think that's amazing. Now, most likely if he's going 18th overall, I think for us, we're starting to see his ADP on CBS start to creep into the 2-3 turn. So 25, 26 in that range. I'm okay with it there. I'm not okay with him as a round 2 pick. So if you start receiver, he's your 3rd receiver, great. If he's your 1st receiver, I'm a little bit icky with it. And the longer that Puka Nacua remains out, and clearly, you buy Sean McVay's honesty because he's usually, tried and true with that. So Nacua should be fine for week 1. But imagine a world where there is no Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp is back to being that guy again, so he can still return some pretty good value. So it's just a matter of, I guess, where you're drafting him, how soon you're drafting him, and how much you want to buy into a 31-year-old wide receiver.
Andrew Erickson, you just turned 30, so you understand the plight of Cooper Kupp. You're already in decline, I could tell. Andrew, let's talk about this, because there were even moments last year where you saw the flashes of, oh, there's the Cooper Kupp, right? We had that game where he had 7 catches for 148 and a touchdown against Arizona, 115 against Baltimore with a touchdown, 111 back-to-back weeks against Washington, and then other incompletes. And he did miss the first 4 weeks of the season altogether. He did not play week 18. So being on the field, right? Availability is the best ability, everyone always says. And Cooper Kupp hasn't given you a lot of that in the last 2 years. And frankly, going into the giant breakout, incredible season that he had a few years ago, where he broke fantasy, he had struggled at times as well with some of the help. So where do you stand with Cooper Kupp? Are you somebody that's willing to take the risk, or do you have to quantify it in some way where it makes sense for the roster that you're creating?
I am 100% out Cooper Kupp. I should have included him maybe on the bus that I was talking about him earlier, but for me, it's a point of, I just don't think we're going to ever get the same guy we had. I know that they're saying he looks healthy, he's good to go. This is what they always say about every single player that's way past their prime. Like, he's older. He showed signs of decline. These are the things that are the red flags that tell us to stay away. And like Michael Thomas, glowing reviews last year. Derek Carr, he looks like the same old Michael Thomas. This is great. And then what happened? He barely played. Like, I'm not saying Cooper Kupp is going to miss the entire season, but just I just don't want to keep chasing Cooper Kupp. And that season that happened now 3 years ago, right? Even though he was productive in 2022 for half a year, I just have seen too much. For me, the milk doesn't unspoil. Like, we've seen bad with Cooper Kupp, and this is where I get concerned. So the fact that he is starting to go in round 2, that absolutely terrifies me. Again, we talked about Nico Collins, Marvin. I'm taking those guys clearly over Cooper Kupp. Rather much have read those players, but now you're starting to see him go in that similar range. So for me, he's too expensive and there's too much risk for him for me.
Let me give you the inverse, because you said no, never, not at all. What if you are in a draft with a bunch of, people like you, myself, who are kind of fading Kupp a little bit or a little afraid? If he went down to wide receiver 25 range, is that enough for you to buy in, let's say, over a guy like Stephon Diggs or over a guy like Zay Flowers? Is that where Cooper Kupp, you might even test the waters, or you're just saying, nope, I'm out, I'm done, I've been hurt too many times and I can't love again?
So I've been trying to move him up in the rankings and based on the Puka Nacua injury. And every time I try to move him ahead of another receiver, I'm thinking to myself, I'd rather just have this other receiver instead. And so that's the reality that I'm facing with Cooper Kupp. And again, I understand the being on because if he is healthy, then I'm going to look wrong. But what has he shown us on the field the last 2 years that's going to suggest that he is going to be healthy and be the old Cooper Kupp? I don't see it. These reports coming out of camp, this is what they're supposed to say. This is what they're always going to say. So for me, I'm just shying away. There's other receivers I like much more.
All right, Jamey, I want to go to another guy on your list here, T. Higgins, another guy that I keep drafting everywhere, and I'm getting him as a 3 in a lot of drafts, and that to me is just absurd. We were talking earlier in Fantasy Fest when we had Jake Seeley on. We were talking about him as a complete value, as a guy in an offense is going to be a throw-first situation. He's being drafted as wide receiver 28, but the body of work for healthy T. Higgins with healthy Joe Burrow is far greater than that. I mean, he was wide receiver 17 just in 2022, where he had 74 catches, 7 touchdowns for 1029. So in your opinion, why is T. Higgins, who did have some contract issues, nothing really got solved, he's back, why is he a guy you're betting on in 2024 to make a bounce back?
Well, first off, the value is incredible, so you're getting a guy that has huge bounce back potential. I mean, he should be the poster child for this subject, just in terms of what he has the ability to do when healthy, and you assume motivated. Some people will come back and say, well, if he has a minor injury or two, will he sit out because he's afraid of something ruining the potential of a long-term deal? He still has to prove himself. He's going to get paid no matter what. But if he wants to get that mega deal that these receivers are getting, and probably his teammates going to get, which we hope, he's got to go out there and produce. And so far in camp, he looks fantastic. In the preseason performance, at least the first game, he looked fantastic. When he's on his game, he's one of the best receivers in football, and the best part about it is he's a 1B. And so we're dealing with a pretty significant holdout situation with Jamar Chase right now. And if you want to believe Chad Ochocinco, and we're going to see, maybe Jamar Chase miss some time in the regular season. Well, that's the caveat that you get with T. Higgins. If Chase gets hurt, we saw it 2022, the 4 games that he was out, Higgins becomes a top 10, if not top 5 caliber fantasy option. So you're getting a guy that's a wide receiver 2 at a huge discount at wide receiver 28, if that's where he's getting drafted. And then the potential is very similar to Devontae Smith. Whenever one of the other guys on the Eagles misses times, Devontae Smith, just his numbers pop, whether mostly he's been Dallas Goedert. But that's the setup for Higgins right now. So his price tag's amazing. The potential production on its own, without anything changing, is amazing. And if there were to be a Jamar Chase injury, he could be an absolute star. The flip side of that is we saw Joe Burrow miss time last year, and we had a couple good Jake Browning games T. Higgins had a couple good games with Jake Browning, but that's not what you want to hope for. You want to hope for Joe Burrow out there 100%. Jamar Chase, if he has to miss a game or two, T. Higgins really pops. Even if Chase is there, though, Higgins will be a must-start fantasy option, and I think top 20 upside.
I love it. And to me, again, the floor is there. The ceiling is there. The opportunity should, again, injury befall Jamar Chase, could even grow into something even better. So a lot more outs, as they say, on the positive side for T. Higgins. Andrew, let's get to one of your guys on this list of bounce back wide receivers. And let's talk a little bit about Jaylen Waddle, because Jaylen Waddle has been a dude that you have been all in on, as have I. The ADP has come up a little bit since July. I remember around July 1st, we were doing some shows together early on. You and I were looking at each other and scratching our heads going, what in the world is going on here? You see the ECR is at wide receiver 15, but the ADP, wide receiver 20, still not catching up. So the experts are saying, hey, everybody, they're screaming, draft Jaylen Waddle sooner. And the ADP just isn't quite catching up. I don't understand why that is. Andrew, walk us through again why Jaylen Waddle, in your opinion, is a guy who is going to bounce back and bounce back in a big way in 2024.
Well, the reason the ADP is not catching up is because everybody's drafting guys like Cooper Kupp, Nico Collins, Marvin Harrison, Drake London, all the guys.
Easy. No more disparaging Marvin Harrison Jr. on this program. I told you in the last segment.
I don't hate everyone in round 2 from wide receivers. It's just I'm circling my guy as Jaylen Waddle. Like, that's the guy I want out of the bunch, because for me, he checks off all the boxes. He's done it before in 2 different ways. He's been a wide receiver 1 as a rookie and then alongside Tyreek Hill in his second year. Last year, banged up with injuries, still had over 1,000 receiving yards. But what held him back? 4 touchdowns. What's going to happen in the Dolphins offense this year? Are we going to see the backfield score 30-plus touchdowns combined between Raheem Mostert and Achane again? Or are we going to see Jaylen Waddle regress positively in terms of his touchdowns and score double digits? I think that's going to happen. He's too talented of a player, former first-round pick, former top 10 overall pick. That what if Tyreek Hill misses again? Going back to these real-life number 2 wide receivers, they have this untapped potential where if that alpha takes a step back, gets hurt, banged up, well, then what happens? Jaylen Waddle could be the highest scoring wide receiver any single week in that Dolphins offense. And that's even with Tyreek Hill on the team. So for all those reasons, that's why I just have so much faith in Jaylen Waddle. Again, he has the connection with Tua. He's played with Tua since Alabama. That's the connection I want to buy into. And this Dolphins offense is going to be super explosive. Their defense, oh my God, I don't know if they have any defensive linemen left. Everyone keeps retiring. So I think it's going to be shootout after shootout in Miami. And I think Jaylen Waddle is going to be a huge part of it. So for me, again, I'm not taking stabs on these more projection-based wide receivers in his range. I'm taking the proven production with Jaylen Waddle. I'm going to draft him as much as I can.
Waddle is proven. I mean, I know it was 2 seasons before he got hurt, but those were some very valuable seasons. Jamie, where do you stand on Waddle? Are you as pro Jaylen Waddle as Erickson and I are this year?
Top 12 guy, round 2 pick. Yeah, I think you're looking at, Andrew nailed it. And we saw it last year, the Jets game. One of the best secondaries in football. He tore him up, and I'm sorry, that was a game Tyreek Hill missed. There's just so much upside here. And, I think, first off, you want to see him healthy. He's dealing with something in practice that's keeping him out. So that's a little concerning for what we dealt with last year, so you don't want to see anything, keep him off the field. That being said, I think the whole Odell Beckham signing, may have scared some people a little bit, that they're going to have a name there that could take away from, maybe both these guys, but nobody's running away from Tyreek Hill. I also think going back to last year, there was the whole story, and I think this impacted Jaylen Waddle's numbers a little bit, getting Tyreek Hill 2,000 yards. That was something the Dolphins really tried to do. They tried to get that for Tyreek Hill, and I think that took away a little bit from Waddle's overall production.
Point.
The injuries were the biggest part of it, but still, he's got so much upside, and there's just so much to love about this. That defense is going to be a problem. The offensive line's a concern too, so just keep that in mind. So we could see Tua on his back a little bit. So if you are concerned about Waddle, just put that in the back of your mind, because we know what that was like for Waddle 2 years ago. When Tua was in and out of the lineup. But I still think, just based on what he's capable of doing, what you're talking about, and you said it, the receivers in his range, he should absolutely go ahead of Cooper Kupp. If anybody's making that decision, you're making a mistake.
Love it. Yeah, big Jaylen Waddle fan this year, and all 3 of us are screaming at you guys right now. Please draft him as often as you possibly can. The man also got paid. Follow the money. They believe in Jaylen Waddle, otherwise they wouldn't be throwing contracts at him. Next guy on the list is another one who's going a little bit later, more like wide receiver 35 on most people's boards here in the expert consensus rankings. It's Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Jamie, this is a player that has given us some really solid fantasy productivity before. He has missed some time here and there. They're talking about moving him back into the slot and moving him into that situation with Dave Canales gone as the offensive coordinator. There is a little bit of uncertainty of, can Baker Mayfield sustain all the progress from last year, or is it going to be Geno Smith 2.0 where things fall off the map? Where do you stand here with Godwin? Is it just you can't pass up the player at the value, or do you really see him as somebody who's going to be truly an asset this season?
Yes. Yeah, all the above. I think, you saw last year, and he talked about this, one of my colleagues, Pete Prisco, covers the NFL for 30 plus years, was in Bucs camp and got a chance to speak to Chris, and he said he finally feels back to himself after dealing with the ACL from a couple of years. I do think going back in the slot is huge for him. Now, he's not going to be Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, because of Baker Mayfield, because of the different type of quarterback clearly that we're looking at here. I'll take a 50-year-old Tom Brady over Baker Mayfield right now. But we saw the last 5 games, after the complaints, the Carolina game where he had no catches on 3 targets, whatever it was, broke the streak. He out-targeted Mike Evans in the final 5 games this season. And I think that matters. But I really think just him going back in the slot is going to be huge. He's not going to be a top 15 caliber player like he was in his heyday pre-ACL tear, but top 30, top 25, maybe top 20 is certainly within the realm of possibility. And we're talking about, again, second, tier or number 2 receiver, or at least perceived number 2 receiver on these teams. Mike Evans is 31. We saw the one game last year where Evans got banged. That was early in the season, and Chris Godwin was an absolute monster in that game. And so if Evans does miss any time, again, you're seeing the potential upside of what Chris Godwin can be. And this is somebody that, yes, he's getting older. He's not at that Cooper Kupp age where you have to worry about it. So he's not showing you the breakdown potential, but he does have a pretty good resume. And so I still think that there's the potential of him to get back to that caliber of player. Again, not to the same heights, but pretty close to it. So at the cost, he's easy to draft and somebody that you can take if you really go receiver heavy, a number 4 receiver. I wouldn't be opposed, though, if he's my 3rd receiver on my team.
All right, before we get to the next guy on Andrew's list, and I can assure you it's one I'm very excited to talk about, don't forget about the cheat sheet creator that's available for you at Fantasy Pros. If you're tired of all the draft day uncertainty, the cheat sheet creator is your personal guide to perfect league-specific rankings. You can visualize your path to victory. As you add tiers, you can sync your league for free to craft your custom rankings, ensuring that every pick you make is strategic and it's tailored to your league settings specifically. Enter your draft with confidence. Sync your league for free today at fantasypros.com/draftwizard or at Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app, and use the cheat sheet creator to dominate all of your fantasy football drafts. Now, one guy that I am drafting everywhere, and Andrew Erickson might have fought with me a little bit earlier in the last segment, but we are back to being friends after Jaylen Waddle conversation. It is Christian Watson. The upside at wide receiver 40 is absurd. Sometimes he's going even later than that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. My fantasy team will live on. But if I'm right, and Jordan Love plays as well as he did last year, this guy, to me, Andrew, could be a league winner. Let's talk about Watson and what you think his upside is in 2024.
Yeah, Watson was one of those examples of the projected breakout guy one year that totally misfires and then gets discounted significantly the following year. And that's when they actually do fire on the breakout. But the best part is you don't have to take any risk. There's no risk involved really with taking a shot on Christian Watson, because when this guy is on the field, he's going to produce. Over his last 15 games, he's averaged 13.3 points per game, same as Jamar Chase, his average points per game from 2023. This guy has been a wide receiver 1 in fantasy points when he's on the field and healthy. Again, that's the big question, but it's more than well baked into his wide receiver 40 ADP. When you look at betting odds, which is always kind of like a fun thing to look in the fantasy lens, he's in the top 10 shortest odds to lead the NFL in touchdown catches. If Jordan Love has a monster year and he improves after what he did as a first-time starter, Christian Watson's going to have a massive part in it. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be part of that explosion potentially from Jordan Love taking another step in his second year as a full-time starter. So for me, I'm not forgetting what I saw as a rookie. And even last year, again, going back to touchdowns, we have 4 number 1 wide receivers on the Green Bay Packers. So how do we get guys to stand out? Who catches the most touchdowns? Well, last year, Watson had 15 end zone targets during the regular season and postseason combined. That ranks 6th overall among players. The betting odds are telling us that, hey, he has the most touchdown upside of this bunch, and that's what I'm going to chase outside the top 36 wide receivers.
Now, Jamey, you and I typically share the same board. We always are in on the same players. It's why I hate seeing you in any expert league draft that I'm in, because I know it's going to be a long day at the office. We're just going to be fighting over the same guys. Is Christian Watson another one of these players that you and I are going to be fighting over in 2024?
Put him up. Yeah, I think for sure. Andrew said it. He's different than the other 3 number 1 guys there, and I'm sure if you asked Matt LaFleur, he'd probably say Bo Melton's a number 1 guy too. It's just one of those receiving cores where there's going to be a lot of diversity, but one guy, when he's right, stands above the rest, and that's Christian Watson. And so I'm hopeful he can stay healthy. I'm an old school guy. I still like to see these 3rd-year receivers when they've shown you something go into that season. When I first got this job many moons ago, it was I got a chance to speak to a lot of older receivers, Jerry Rice, Chris Carter, those type of guys. I'm only doing that because Joe likes when I name drop.
I love it. I got to pick them all up after the show now.
They
Mess.
they all told me, the third year is when they get the rapport with their quarterback. They understand the route tree. They understand coverage. And for this guy, I mean, clearly he just has to stay on the field because the speed is elite. The playmaking ability is elite. And, just the hamstrings right now have been a problem. So hopefully they solved it. The cost is amazing for what the upside is. Like you said, Joe, he's not going to wreck your fantasy team if you draft him in this range. And so for me, I don't like to leave a draft. And Andrew and I were kind of joking at this at the flex draft without one of the Packers receivers, just because they're fun and there's upside really 1 through 4. The joke, Andrew looked at our board and said, "No Dontavian Wicks, what's wrong with you guys?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let me take Wicks."
I missed him. I wanted him. I didn't even get him. But I got Watson.
Watson is the one for me that I target first, just because again, if he hits, there's lottery ticket upside with what he can do.
All right. And by the way, you know what the worst part about that whole thing is, Jamie? The one time I've ever actually gotten to interview or be with and talk to a real live active NFL wide receiver, guess who was there, Andrew? Jamey Eisenberg in the room with me. So it's like I can't even brag to him about it because he's right there with me doing the same one.
Well, at least you have a witness. Now people will believe you. That's good.
I know, but it doesn't matter. It's not cool. I can't be cool like Jamie. All right, let's get to another one of the guys on the list here. And Andrew, you've got Calvin Ridley out there as a player potentially that you think. Give me the 30-second to a minute on why people should be drafting Calvin Ridley in 2024.
Ridley had 76 catches on 136 targets for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns last year, and he was a bust. It's because we put expectations on a guy that had missed so much time in the NFL that it was impossible for him to not really be a bust. So for me, I think that another year back to football, an NFL season under his belt for an older player that had missed so much time in an offense that I expect to be much more pass happy than we've seen in previous stints with the Tennessee Titans. There's no more Derrick Henry. And this DeAndre Hopkins knee injury concerns me. He's an older receiver too. So even though he had the rapport with Levis entering the year, well, he's already missed so much time. So I think Ridley's going to be the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. He's wide receiver 37 ADP. Like Calvin Ridley, we were drafting the top 15 receivers last year, which was out of control. But now it's come so much the other way because people hate Ridley because of how badly he burned them. I think that he's an easy bounce back candidate. He's never finished worse than wide receiver 25 in a season where he's been fully healthy.
Jamie, you've got 2 more wide receivers to talk about on your list. The first is Diontae Johnson. The next is Curtis Samuel. And both of these guys are very intriguing. I want to start with Diontae Johnson because where I continue to struggle is I get it. Last year, Adam Thielen kind of came out of nowhere and he was a big target hog. And in PPR leagues, he became a pretty good value off the waiver wire, basically. And now Diontae Johnson has come in. Is it going to be Adam Thielen again? Can Dave Canales fix Bryce Young and all the inefficiencies that they had last season? A lot of problems with the Carolina offense. So why is Diontae Johnson still potentially a fantasy bounce back despite all those potential negatives?
I do think we'll see a better Bryce Young. I'm not the biggest fan, but I do think better offensive line play, better coaching will help him across the board. And certainly the addition of Diontae Johnson will hopefully bring out the best of him. And we've seen this formula before, where you bring in a veteran receiver, to a young quarterback, and it does good things. In some cases, does wonders. Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. He was great. Tua Tagovailoa got Tyreek Hill. He was great. Diontae Johnson's not that guy, but he is going to make Bryce Young better. And I think Canales will make, Bryce Young better. You mentioned it with the Baker Mayfield conversation. We've seen Canales in Seattle, got a great year out of Geno Smith, got a great year out of Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. Hopefully does the same thing with this passing attack. But I do think when you talk about what he has been, he has shown the ability to get open. He has shown you the ability to not score touchdowns. So there's a negative, but he's shown you the ability also to, be a pretty good playmaker in some unfavorable situations with some bad quarterbacks. So we'll see if Bryce Young can support Diontae Johnson to be at least a number 3 receiver. I don't have him ranked anywhere close to the top 20. I think he's 37th for me. But again, similar to Christian Watson, he's not going to break your fantasy team if you invest in him. He's the worst receiver that we've talked about so far. So again, no huge expectations. But I do think that Thielen is going to fade to the back of the bunch a little bit, or at least behind not only Johnson, but I also hope Xavier Legette or Legette, or however we're saying his name these days, the rookie receiver that they brought from South Carolina. I hope those are the 2 top target getters for Carolina's offense because I think they have more upside than Adam Thielen. But in terms of PPR, Diontae Johnson, is he a 100-catch guy? Probably not. 80? I think that's realistic if he stays healthy. And so cheap option, can get you some good receptions. If he finds the end zone 5 or 6 times, we'll be pretty happy about it.
Andrew, do you feel the same way about Diontae Johnson, that maybe those full point PPR leagues, he's kind of a nice wide receiver 4/5 guy that you could throw in there on, the flex spot or in bye weeks and feel pretty good about maybe double-digit targets there?
Yeah, I think that he's one of these players that you're not going to circle him as, Diontae Johnson league winner, but Diontae Johnson value pick every single time when I need a wide receiver 3, 4. Yes, every single time Diontae Johnson. I'd have more of him if I wasn't drafting so much Chris Godwin.
We'll squeeze one more in here. Curtis Samuel. The Buffalo Bills wide receiver core is wide open for debate. I don't know if anybody's got the definitive answer for it. Some people will tell you Keon Coleman. Some people will tell you Khalil Shakir. Some people just pivot all together and say Dalton Kincaid. But I have heard a lot of people, Jamie, talk about Curtis Samuel as maybe the guy to watch for. And when you consider some of the ADP that you're looking at, again, wide receiver 53, 51, he's going in that pretty deep, dark range at wide receiver. So why is Curtis Samuel, in your opinion, somebody who is poised to break out? What do you see potentially on the horizon for him?
Well, I think it's more bounce back. I don't think breakout, but I think
that's what I mean. I meant to say, pardon me. I meant to say,
no, yeah. I think
I'm only into hour 2. This is the problem here. Usually hour 4 or 5. That's when these things start happening.
We've all been there on these marathon shows. And you guys are doing a great job. The thing, well, first off, let's clarify. I gave the list before the turf toe injury for Samuel, so hopefully he's going to be okay. That's a big part of this. You never want to hear those type of things, but you said it. The ADP is free for what might be Josh Allen's go-to guy. And I don't think that's going to be the case. He's my 3rd favorite Bills receiver. I think Coleman's upside is clearly, higher. And I'm a Khalil Shakir guy. I think what we saw at the end of last season will somewhat carry over. I don't think any of these guys are difference makers right away. Coleman by the end of the season could have like a Rashee Rice type impact, where he takes off in the second half. But you're tying yourself to one of the best quarterbacks in football and a very ambiguous receiving core right now. And the thing that's encouraging, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this ad nauseum, is the connection with Joe Brady, the offense coordinator who he had the most success with when they were in Carolina together. So there'll be some gadget plays. He may be, the slot receiver. He may be the second outside guy. I don't think he's going to be the alpha. I do think that we're going to see, if a pecking order of targets, he's probably 4th, when you factor in even James Cook. So, but you just got to understand, no risk. There is zero risk that if he hits to what he was with Joe Brady, or if he hits to become the best Bills wide receiver, you just struck gold with one of your, 3rd or 4th last round picks. So I don't want to overvalue Curtis Samuel, but I also, very similar to the Packers receivers, if I walk away with one of those 3 guys, Coleman, Shakir, or Samuel, I'm pretty happy with that just for what could become in this Buffalo's offense.
Are you better off drafting Keon Coleman or making trades for him in week 6?
I would think making trades for him in week 6, but again, just depends how far he falls. I think the snap counts, it's funny, we get so excited about snap counts in the fantasy community. Every, Joe Schmo fantasy player who is our lifeblood, they just see no catches and they go, I'm not touching him. He hasn't gotten a catch in the preseason. Why would I want that? But he's played every snap though. There
you go. We're going to get traded, though, all 3 of us in just a moment. Jamey Eisenberg, thanks so much for hanging out with us today on the Fantasy Fest program.